Hi, welcome to Leicester Jazz House TV. I'm Becky Wilson and I'm here today at Embrace Arts in Leicester with Martin Speake. So just to start off with a few questions really. Tell us a bit about yourself and the performance that you're going to be doing tonight.
A bit about myself. I'm an alto saxophonist and have been for a number of years, and I could go into a lot of history if you want. I've led lots of different projects over the years, but I'm really pleased with this particular one. I've managed to get about a 25-day tour through the UK, and this is the second gig, so I'm really pleased to be here in Leicester. We played in London last week, which was sold out. It's very nice at King's Place, very nice arts place in London, and it's the beginning of a tour with a trio, two collaborators that I've been playing with for quite a while. Mike Outram, guitar player, and Jeff Williams, who I met about 10 years ago. He's an American drummer who now lives here half the time, and we've been collaborating since he's been here. With Mike, probably I've known Mike about 15 years, and it's a trio, so no bass. I suppose that's what's relatively unusual about it, this project.
Well, could you just tell us a bit more about kind of what your influences are with jazz and how you actually got started? So what really inspired you to be a jazz musician?
At the beginning, I had music in the house. My mum played things like Ella Fitzgerald and Frank Sinatra and Count Basie. But actually it was a friend. I didn't play an instrument until I was 16 and I'd already left school. I was really disillusioned with school and in fact not interested in music when it was taught at school, because it was a purely classical kind of way of teaching. And actually I love classical music now, but it was very narrow at the time. But I had a friend who played guitar at school, and he got me into some British jazz. He played me some recordings, and I suppose I've got to thank him for that if I go to the beginning. And then some of the early recordings I liked. I really liked Ornette Coleman live at the Golden Circle. That was one of the first recordings I remember listening to, which I suppose is a little bit freer jazz. And since then I've probably gone back historically and listened to music before that time. I jump around historically in terms of what I listen to all the time.
So quite a lot of influences. Really.
Yeah, I suppose that was your question with the influences, isn't it? We'll get back to that. The musical influences, yeah, quite a lot of influence. It's some of them you probably won't be a necessarily reference point in the music, and others you would be, like Paul Motion is a big influence on me, the drummer, and he had a trio with his line-up saxophone, guitar, drums, so I suppose you could say it's influence. But actually, just a bigger influence on a trio sound is Lester Young, Nat King Cole and Buddy Rich, and that's stylistically it's totally different. And another trio I liked is Ellery Eskin's trio, and that's saxophone, accordion. Just trying to remember, Andrew Parkin plays accordion, so saxophone, accordion and drums. I'm a big fan of really small groups, and I think I'm getting smaller and smaller. I've always had quartets, but this trio feels great. And these particular players cover sonically the whole range anyway, so we don't miss the bass. With Mike Outram particularly, because of how he plays the guitar and the electronics he uses, the bass frequency is covered if we need it anyway. Lots of other influences though, that's a question. All kinds of influences.
Just kind of keeping with the theme of influences really, what would you say is the most memorable jazz album that you've ever brought or listened to? Or even what was the first album that you remember buying?
It probably was that, might have been Ornette Coleman live at the Golden Circle, which I mentioned earlier. I think that was one of my first albums. Jazz. The first, I was remembering earlier in the car journey actually, the first album I ever bought was Desmond Dekker, who's reggae, I don't really know him, a fantastic album I had called Israel. And then I bought Led Zeppelin 2, I think, and that was the first gig I went to when I was about 13. But that's not jazz, obviously. I remember really liking Charlie Parker with an album called Bird and Diz, a live album. That was very influential. A lot of Miles Davis early on. But over the years, there've been lots of influential albums. So if you're talking over the years, I could probably mention others, but at the beginning they were those ones.
Well, just kind of moving on from that, you're an educator yourself, you teach yourself. As someone who educates young people, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give to someone who really wants to become a jazz musician, who really, really, really wants to play for a living? What would you say to them? What would be the one piece of advice?
I could give a few pieces of advice. One is be yourself. Be yourself and gravitate. We all know what we like, so when we don't do what other people tell you to do. Not that can't be good advice sometimes. For instance, if I say to students, and they haven't thought of checking out this player, I say, why don't you check out this player? That might not be natural to them to check out Leicester Young, or Noggins or Charlie Parker, for instance. But on the other side of it, they have to look inside themselves and work out why they have a connection with a particular piece of music, because everyone is really unique in how they hear music. That's one piece of advice. Go with what your heart tells you. Now, in terms of, because did you say career or make a living? What was your question? Did you say?
Yeah, both. Someone who really wants to become a jazz musician, and someone who actually really wants it to be their career.
Okay, right. I think there are two things, different things there, because I think, and I think it's harder and harder now to have a so-called career in playing music, any kind of music, actually, not just jazz. Just because of how undervalued creativity and music and arts are in this society at the moment. I don't think you have to do it for a living, necessarily. In fact, in some ways, I think it might be better not to, so that you're not thinking, oh, I've got to earn money from this, something that I love. Most jazz musicians, most musicians I know, kind of are ducking and diving all the time, and I actually see it as guerrilla warfare, being a jazz musician, in a way, and how to survive in this society when there are a lot of negative things going against us. There are a lot of positive things, because actually when you play a gig, it really touches people, and people, I think, when they hear live music, it's very important for them. But the whole of society, the way it's going now, is more about staying in and looking at the computer or watching television. I've kind of drifted onto another subject here I could talk about all day. So, but what I'm saying, get back to what you're asking, it doesn't have to be a profession necessarily, in the sense of having to earn money constantly. Which is in a way probably why I teach, because I don't want to do any gigs that I don't feel in my heart that's what I'm going to do. I actually really love teaching as well, so I feel quite lucky in a lot of ways. But I also know musicians, and in fact the whole history of the music, musicians have done other jobs. Just thinking about when John Coltrane died, one of the great musicians, McCoy Tyner, who was in his band and they were working 48, 50 weeks of the year in Coltrane's band. But when Coltrane died, McCoy got a job as a cab driver. This can happen to anybody at any time.
Well, I mean...
Probably hasn't answered anything.
No, there's actually a really good piece of advice in there. What I'm going to say, one of the things that you mentioned about following your heart, and that's actually something that a lot of jazz musicians talk about, like how jazz, has led them to following their heart, and that kind of leads really well onto my next question. Is there a particular song that you love to play, or a bit of music that really gets you going, that it's really quite close to you in your heart?
That's quite an interesting question. I mean, there are lots of standard songs that I love, and I mean, in this group we play mainly my own music, but interspersed with 2 or 3 standard songs, and I'm very particular about which ones I choose and that I think would be appropriate for this band. I can't answer it really specifically, apart from the fact that this changes all the time. I'm discovering new songs all the time. So, for instance, in this band, there's 3 songs that I really like that we play. One's called Bewitched, Bothered and Bewildered, which you might know. I can't remember who composed any of these, actually. Another one is called When Your Lover Is Gone. And probably my favourite out of the 3 of them is a song called If I Loved You, which is from Carousel. It's from a musical called Carousel. ourselves. And of course, jazz musicians have always used songs from musicals to distort and corrupt and make them their own. So I'd say that one at the moment, maybe today, is my favourite, but tomorrow it could be something else. There are lots of amazing songs out there.
Well, you know, it's been fantastic talking to you. Finally, would you be able to just tell us about any up-and-coming projects that you're working on, what you're going to be doing in the future?
This is the project I'm working on at the moment. So I've got 3 weeks solid from Monday. What day is it today? Friday, so we've got 2 days off, and then Monday we're playing Ronnie Scott's in London, and there's 3 weeks of gigs. So I'm hoping this can get out to other people, and maybe somebody can come to a gig somewhere else. But apart from this trio, which I'm really pleased about, I just started a new collaboration with an improvising classical piano player called Douglas Finch, who used to be head of piano at Trinity London Conservatoire of Music, where I teach. And we just happened to meet in a teaching situation. He's from a totally different discipline, classical music. He's got all that area to draw on, and I've got all jazz to draw on. So we have a totally different vocabulary, language, but we meet in the middle. And we've just recorded a duo album, and so I'm really excited about that. So hopefully something's going to happen with that as well.
Brilliant. Well, it's been absolutely wonderful talking to you, and I hope you have a great show tonight.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Nice to meet you. Thanks a lot. My name is Martin Speake, and you're watching Leicester Jazz House TV.